This episode is brought to you by Mailtrap. More on them later.
Welcome to No Compromises, a peek into the mind of two old web devs who have seen some things. This is Joel.
And this is Aaron.
So, Joel.
So, Aaron, I am definitely not too proud to let all of you know that, like, once or twice a year, I have to ask Aaron for help on something. And I am so grateful when he helps me out. And I thought, oddly enough, this actually happened twice last week. Like I said, it's normally once or twice a year.
That's the whole year that is done then.
That's right. I've burned up my quota officially. But I don't know. I thought there might be something interesting to kind of talk through at least one of the scenarios. And I think the technical details of it might be interesting. And I think there might be some broader lessons worth talking about. Do you agree at all, Aaron?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay. So I was, just to set up the problem, I was working on an integration with a Laravel app that used an oauth 2 flow. And for the geeks out there, it was specifically the authorization code grant flow. And I was getting this situation where basically when I initiated the flow, the way you do this for like security, think of this as like the CSRF protection that we have on web forms. The way it's applied to this OAuth flow is like you set the state variable and you have to remember it. So when they come back and they complete the flow, you can compare that state, and it protects against tampering or replay or whatever. Like it's useful to have.
Mm-hmm.
But what was happening to me is I would set it in the session, and it was there, right? I would do the redirect, the flow would come back, and like the session was empty. And I was banging my head against the wall, and I tried numerous things, and I couldn't figure it out, right? So I reached out to you for help, Aaron. And maybe you can pick up the story from your perspective as to getting this plea for help from me.
Yeah. So the first thing when I hear that, I was like, well, is the session empty? Is it the same session? Is it a new session? So we did troubleshooting around that to find out it was actually a different session.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was weird. And one of the things that makes me think about then is maybe it's a different version of the URL, SSL versus not, or any of those different things. So that's kind of the next thing that we troubleshooted. Shooted.
It is a tough word to use in the past tense, especially on a clean podcast. That's all I'll say.
It was the same URL, you had to click up in the top to make sure that it was.
Because browsers hide that now. You love that, right?
Yep. So then one of the things that we did is we were just looking at the network traffic, and there was just something in there that popped up, and I don't even remember exactly how it worked, but it was one of the network traffic things sent me down a rabbit hole from something I had done maybe years ago. And so we were doing this, sending it back and forth, and one of the network requests was a pre-flight. And I was like, why is there a pre-flight? And then that just kind of made me go through the whole process of, I wonder if it's JavaScript, and what happens when you do redirects with JavaScript, and what about the cookies with JavaScript, and is it HTTP, and et cetera, et cetera. And that's kind of how we went down the route of, hey, there's something with cookies and sessions and stuff like that. And that's what we need to troubleshoot into.
Yeah. So there's I think there's a couple interesting takeaways for me personally. One is just you know your tools, right? So we were in the network tab of Chrome, and we were digging specifically into the cookies that were being set. And so that's part of it. Nothing too advanced there, but just kind of knowing where to look, like what things mean. And I think maybe the second part is like actually knowing how the web works. Like, how does Laravel actually know what session you're part of, right? Like what is the cookie it sends? Why does it need that cookie to be sent back to connect the dots? Like, some of these are very basic, fundamental web things, but having that in your head and having like a deeper understanding of that is actually kind of critical to troubleshoot something like this. Because if you don't know how a session works, like, how do you troubleshoot why the session isn't working? So,
and there's nothing really that unique. Also, when we talk about Laravel,
Right. Yeah.
With that, that's web basics. So it
Yes.
doesn't necessarily matter if it's Laravel or a Node project or
Yeah.
Microsoft.
Yeah. Vanilla PHP, what what you're saying, like sessions work a specific way. And the fundamental way is cookies. And so like I remember looking at that cookies tab with you, and you're even like, all right, Joel, now do the first request. And then like we took a screenshot of the cookie, then we did the flow, and when it came back, we saw it was a different, or we
Well,
saw, okay,
hold on,
what?
hold on here. I seem to remember it being that we saw it. Well, Joel saw it was the same cookie, and I
I
said,
did.
and then Joel saw that it was a different cookie.
Yeah. And so again, this is a nuance of the tool being the Chrome developer tools, but it was showing the cookie and it was the same cookie. But what I wasn't initially noticing is it was in a different color because it was being filtered out, right? Is
Mhm.
that what you recall, Aaron?
I do remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. So the browser knew this cookie should normally be sent to it, but it decided not to send it, which is what ultimately led us to the solution. Which, Aaron, do you want to tell us what your brilliant solution was that you told me to do?
Yeah, I told him to Google. No. This had a lot to do with the different configurations for cross-site security, and
Yeah.
especially cross-site cookies and third-party, et cetera. So
Yeah.
we went and looked at the session
Yeah.
settings.
Config session in Laravel is
Yeah,
where it's configured.
and kind of looked at the same site setting, and that was really
Yeah.
the key there is for whatever reason this project was set to strict, and there's a
Hmm.
numerous number of different ways that you or reasons why you might want that. In this particular case, because of the types of third party we were integrating with and what we had to do, we set this to lax, which is still a perfectly fine and a default setting
Yeah.
most of the time, at least right now, the time of recording. And
I love how
so
you're hedging.
that was able to solve the problem for us.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I don't know about you, but when I see a security setting and I'm changing it from strict to lax, like something doesn't feel right there. And
Mhm.
so I kind of knew basically what that meant. And like once you had helped me reach this solution, like it made sense to me. But I like if you put me on the stand and told me to explain in detail what is the difference between strict and lax, I couldn't have done it. Like at least not to a level of detail I would have been happy with. So I took it as a learning opportunity too. That night, I like to party. I'm sitting on the couch. I got my iPad, and so I read the RFC on same site cookie configuration because this is something relatively new. Like I want, if my memory is correct from reading this last week, I think it's only been a thing for like the last 5 or 6 years that this property either existed or was enforced or something like that. And then there was this whole period of transition where if you didn't specify it, it kind of defaulted to one thing, and now it's defaulting to something different. So there's a lot of nuance on it, but now I can actually explain to you the difference between lax and strict. And I agree with your assessment. It really isn't weakening security in a significant way for most applications. And in fact,
Right.
for applications like this, you literally cannot run in strict mode. So we either would have to tell the client, all right, I guess we can't integrate with this provider, or go to the provider and see if they have a non like JavaScript redirect based way of doing this. But to use the flow that was presented to us, like this was a requirement to change it from strict to lax. So maybe you listening to this, knew all this already, and you're like, come on, Joel. But the point is, I think the takeaway, at least for me personally, is number one, kind of knowing when to ask for help, and having somebody you can go to for help is like just a huge thing. And second, like when you realize either you don't know something or you kind of know it at a surface level, I think it's exciting to like dig in. And I'm not a total geek because that RFC was like 8 pages. It wasn't like it didn't take me an hour to read it. It was literally 20 minutes on the couch. But now I actually understand something deeper. So I feel good about having to use my once a year token to ask Aaron for help.
Nice.
This episode is sponsored by Mailtrap, an email delivery platform that developers love. An email sending solution with industry best analytics, SMTP, and email API. SDKs for major programming languages, and 24/7 human support. Try for free at mailtrap.io.
So because I live alone, I tend to maybe talk to myself. I mean, not a lot, but some, just
Okay.
out loud. Like, oh, I'm gonna go, blah, 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 stuff like that. And then if it's a good day, I might find myself, I don't know, singing random songs, singing to myself.
Are these
And I
original
think,
songs or like
oh,
known?
just yeah, yeah,
Okay,
no,
good.
original horrible songs like I
Yeah.
am taking out the trash,
Yeah. That's what I was picturing. Good.
Yeah, exactly. And not so bad because I'm doing it in, my house by myself. Well, today I was getting some coffee and I'm walking out to my car and all of a sudden I hear, "Today is the best day because it is Mama and Justin Day." And I see this lady's putting her kid in the car seat.
Okay. Yeah.
And I'm just like, I have two choices right now. One, get into my car right next to hers and pretend like I didn't hear. Or two, what I did do was try to sing along.
I was gonna say there's no way you went for option one in this scenario. So I'm glad my prediction
No,
was right.
no, I didn't try to sing along, but I did like put my head down. I'm like, I heard that. And she was like, "Oh," I'm like, "No, it's okay. I get it. I get it." Because I grew up with little siblings, and I know people with kids and stuff, and you
Mhm.
sing to them. But
Yeah.
I just imagine that you're just like in the parking lot, just singing. Basically, she was singing at the top of her lungs. Like it
Oh,
wasn't
okay.
quiet. It was like,
Okay.
"Rah!"
Well, you know what? In the future, somebody can extend you that same grace and like not calling you out in a weird way for your singing.
Right. Confident and competent programmers still ask for help, just like Joel.
That's right. And if you'd like some help, we can help. Go to masteringlaravel.io and find the Get Unstuck button up in our top menu.